What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Today I'm talking to Michelle from Bov Active. They're an athleisure brand for women that golf. Obviously, not something specifically I would be able to take advantage of, but I'm sure it's a massive category, and I'm excited to learn more about what brought this to life, what this category looks like. So, welcome to the show, Michelle. Why don't you give yourself a quick introduction to the guests?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I'm so excited to be on Pitch Please. So, my name is Michelle Choi, founder of Bov Active, golf athleisure brand for women. Like Mike mentioned, we make really cute pieces that makes women want to golf and stay active. Our products are super, super versatile. You can wear for golf, tennis, pickleball to every day, including hot girl walks. If you have heard of hot girl walks, we love that. Yeah, so up until last month, I had my career in IT project management at one of
Okay.
the big five banks. Yeah, I'm not gonna name exactly which bank, but one of the big five banks in Canada. And yes, I almost 3 years of juggling both corporate life and business. I made a leap to focus full time on my business, Bove Active. So my background is Korean, and if you know, Koreans are obsessed with golf. They're crazy about
I
golf.
did I
Yeah.
did not know that.
Yes, it's part of our culture. That growing up, I was always exposed to golf settings that I wasn't really intimidated by it. But I started taking lessons in my early 20s, and I absolutely fell in love with golf. And not only the sport, but also the golf fashion part. As I mentioned, there's like huge demographic in Korea for golfers that what is available there is so much more diverse, more inclusive, more preppy, fashionable. And like K beauty, K fashion, their standards are a little, I would say high. And so is mine. So I always
Like the
grew up
bar, the
seeing,
bar for
yeah, the
fashion might
bar
be
is
higher
pretty
than the
hard.
bar for
Yeah.
your putting game.
100%. Yeah, my putting game like low. So, but I always knew that like what was available here in Canada specifically and North America generally was not really speaking towards my age group, young professionals. It was more catered towards older women. And also, I'm telling you, older women do complain about how limited and how outdated, unflattering they are as well. That I was never my problem because I could always go back home and play golf in Korea with my parents. But when the pandemic hit, that's when I couldn't go back, and it became my problem. Where, oh my goodness, golf is the only thing open during the pandemic where you could social distance and
True.
actually breathe some fresh air and not get yelled at because you're outside, right? So that's when I found the gap in the market where, oh, it must be a problem for a lot of people as well. That's when I started doing my research and decided to start my own brand.
So, I mean, so many questions here. But maybe let's just start on like you were playing golf. You were obviously into the fashion and maybe seeing some things in Korea that didn't exist here. So you saw some gaps in the
Yeah.
market. But you have no background in the fashion industry per se.
No background in fashion, no background in marketing, retail, e-commerce, name all of it. My educational background is I went to U of T for I majored in economics and minored in East Asian studies and math. So like it was so not related to fashion, so not related to marketing. So we can definitely dive into that for sure how I got here.
Yeah, I mean, so you saw the gap.
Yeah.
Obviously it frustrated you a bit. What was like the tipping point to getting something started? So you said you were doing it while working, which is a very common founder story. What was the tipping point? Why did you decide you needed to solve this and that you
For sure.
had the
Yeah.
tools to solve it?
So, growing up, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I
Okay.
never really wanted to like climb. My goal wasn't to climb up the ladder and be the VP or SVP of a company. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur because my parents also are entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So I was always, as a kid, I was a curious kid, always like looking, asking questions to like entrepreneurs, like, how did you start? Like, how'd you know? Like, how'd you find these? Right. So I was always that. And even like personal things, like how'd you meet your husband? How'd you meet, like, how'd you know, like, that was the one? I was just a curious person, but I always, like, for golf fashion per se, I was really obsessed with golf fashion. Like, I felt so preppy, I felt so classy and all that. The feeling was a little different compared to just being interested in fashion. Sure, I love fashion, but I wouldn't say I'm a fashionista. I'm like always keeping up with the trend. But golf fashion, I was really obsessed with. So I
Okay.
think when that happened, I knew I was the one. And also having that background of like Korean culture and knowing that having the perspective of the diverse selection of things that are available versus knowing what Canadians, what North Americans like, really thought I thought like if I don't solve it, who's gonna solve it? So that's when I started. Yeah.
It's cool. So you always knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur because, and I love that you kind of already went there. Like your parents were entrepreneurs. When did you feel like you knew that that was for you? Like some people, are exposed to parents that are entrepreneurs and do that right out of the gates. Like
Hmm.
right from the start, they just become a serial entrepreneur from their first lawn cutting business, and then it just like
Hmm.
cascades from there. You said you knew, but took a path in the corporate world for a while, and then you kind of stumbled upon, not by mistake because
Hmm.
you were in the space, but you tripped on the right time and the right moment
Hmm.
and the right opportunity to decide what was for you. Well, when did you know entrepreneurship was going to be for you, like you mentioned earlier? And when did you decide that this was the thing versus maybe other ideas that were scratched out of your notebook, if you will?
Yeah, of course. So I think when I knew entrepreneurship was something that I wanted to do, I knew I was entrepreneurial,
Mm,
but like aspiring entrepreneur, but I never really thought like, oh my God, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur. Because to be an entrepreneur, you have to solve a problem, number one. You need to have a product or a service. But if you don't have that idea, what are you gonna entrepreneur about, right? So that's why my parents were like, oh, like I always saw the ups and downs. To be honest, like mostly downs, a lot of downs that for maybe I'm a psycho. I saw it. I'm like, oh my God, I would love to go through those that roller coaster. And maybe it's because I was just exposed to it that I just saw that value of kind of like solving different challenges in your life and how that also grows you, like makes you a better parent, makes you a better daughter, makes you a better person in general.
for
So
sure.
that's that. But yeah, just go back to your question. I didn't really have an item. Like I didn't really have an idea to have a business about. That's why, oh, like based on my educational background and like as what everybody else does, like what else am I gonna do that, right? And
Yeah.
also when I was studying at U of T, I wasn't really exposed to any like startup or entrepreneurship that I know a lot of schools are, but I don't think I was in that experience. I wasn't in that path. That, to be honest, like working at a startup wasn't really an option. It wasn't really like it didn't really come to me. Being Korean, I just took that like path of okay, next step, going to a bank and maybe explore. Because banks are amazing for because they're so huge. There's so many different roles available within the corporation that I thought I could also move around as well. But yeah, just like but with that being said, I was always golfing, always like doing different things, trying different things. That when it came to me, the idea, I thought it was the moment that I could do that. Um, yeah, your second question was,
I think it was you kind of encapsulated it in there, which is like, how did you know the moment and how did you
yeah,
determine when you wanted to be an entrepreneur? And you sort of alluded to, you took this path that was structured and made sense because you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur, but what are you going to entrepreneur against until you were
yeah.
inspired by the right moment? Now, I want to learn more about Bov Active and a athleisure brand and where this fits in and where that is relative to others. But it's a burning question in my mind that I'm sure many people ask you, or if not, they should be asking you, which is, what's it like building an athleisure brand in a world where everyone else that talks about startups automatically assumes it's software? I do see physical products. There are other types of founders out there, but it's almost like the things today are so engineered around software startups and SaaS. That's not you. And so, what's that
That's not
like
me.
owning a physical product, but being in the entrepreneur ecosystem in a world and am I getting that right? Is that how it
Yeah,
feels a little
it
bit
does
in
feel
in
like
the
that
startup world?
too. Yeah, I was part of an accelerator called LOI, League of Innovators. Most of them were talking about these tech products, tech services, and all these like building that MVP that is not physical product as well. So it did at first when I entered that. entrepreneurial world and startup ecosystem, I just felt also like a little like, oh my God, like it's so different. And also, I'll be very like straightforward and honest. When people started talking about like raising funds and VC, I'm like, what is that world, right? Like I never really had that exposure, but now I do feel comfortable. At first, I was thinking like, oh my God, do I have to raise? Like everybody else is raising, like do I have to raise? But again, like after getting more knowledge about like how that cycle works and what that is for, I have a clarity in terms of like what works for athleisure brands versus what works for tech startups. So we can definitely get into that. Like the reason why I love our brand so much and our mission is to get more women into golf, and also make it more fun and less intimidating. It's more of a bigger discussion that I really want to like kind of talk about because we're not just an athleisure brand. We're not just selling cute products because when I was golfing, my parents they told me, "Oh, you should take lessons because being a golfer, like knowing how to golf and being good at golf will open up so many doors for you." Back then, I was like, "Huh, I mean, sure, like I'll take lessons, right?" But I didn't, that was like almost 10 years ago, and I don't think I knew I would have been doing a golf wear brand at this point, right? But during undergrad, I specifically remember this wasn't a moment where I wanted to become an entrepreneur, but more of a moment where, oh, golf is really, really helpful. Is when I was still in undergrad, my friend, who she was in Rotman, and she was part of this student organization where they were hosting a golf tournament. And she's like, "Oh, Michelle, you golf? You should come." I went, I showed up in my golf outfit. Of course, they're from Korea back then, right? Looking so sporty, classy. She looks like she knows what she's doing, and my swing's pretty decent too, right? So, I was the only girl, like young student, who was there, and everyone's like, "Who is that?" Right? And she knows how to golf. Like, who is that? Everyone wanted to talk to me, not in a creepy, pervy way, but in a very like very aspiring, like, oh, like wanting to help out way.
You're like
But
a
I got
lighthouse
through,
brother.
yeah, I got three interviews from that day just by showing up and golfing. I made really great network, and that's when I realized, oh my God, like it really is an advantage that women should take as well because it was mostly men. I was the only like one or two women there that I was like, you know what? As I was building my career in corporate as well, I was like, oh my God, like women that I talked to and also doing a lot of pop-ups and interacting with other women, they're like, oh, when they see we're a golf athleisure brand, they're like, oh, my partner golfs, my boyfriend golfs, my dad golfs, but oh, it seems so fun. They're out all the time, but I don't know. I want to get started. I don't know where to start, or I don't want to do it alone. And this was a lot of the feedback that we got. They're like, oh, this is cute, but I don't golf, right? So that's when I really pivoted my mindset thinking it goes back to answering your question where what really serves, what makes golf athleisure brand versus like startup world different as well, where we started thinking, how can we serve our community, right? Like, how can we make golf more accessible, more fun, more girly, and less intimidating so that all these people that I'm talking to, they're going to be CEOs, they're aspiring CEOs, entrepreneurs, like, they're going to be in management that they got to show up to those golf tournaments and take the same opportunity, take the same, make the same connection as men do, right? So that's when we started really thinking about honing into our values of community and also more value of like women empowerment and making golf more fun. That we started doing sip and swing events, which is a community event where, yeah, women come in. We have different levels. We have golf professionals who are teaching pros, and they would teach strong fundamentals to these women. We're sipping on matcha, we're sipping on non-alcoholic and alcoholic drinks and making friends, mingling. And from these events, we found women actually like having so much fun. They were like, Michelle, this was so fun. When can we golf again? And I'm like, let's go. That's what we wanted to hear. And by being there and also being exposed to Bov Active, even though they don't golf, like they feel less intimidated. They can say
Yeah.
yes to golf. They're like, I have an outfit in my closet. I can say yes and I can show up tomorrow, right? So that's what we're trying to do. I realize that building community is what we need to do as a as a athleisure brand, not a startup, tech startup brand. So like I'm sure there's so many different ways, and community is also important in a tech startup world, but that's how we're actually serving our community.
That's cool. And did the community come first or Bov Active come first? Or was it like immediately hand in hand? It sounds like this came about kind of organically for you.
It definitely came organically, but when I started my brand, as we talked about, like I didn't have any fashion background, marketing background, none of these strategy background that I thought, I'll be honest, I thought when we had great products, I thought we were gonna sell out. But reality is that it wasn't, and we had to do a lot of pop-ups to get our products in front of more people. And then, this was during the pandemic too, right? So yeah, so when it was getting a little better, and from my perspective, I'm like, our products are so high quality. Like people need to touch it and feel it and try it on. Like they need to see how pretty it is. So that's when I started doing pop-ups. This was only like last year, and throughout these interactions, that's when I found all these learnings and insights and the pain point of what women think of golf, because mostly it's golf is still seen as very like boys club, men's club, right? Like deals are made on the golf course, right? So as a woman myself, woman of color as well, like when I do walk into a golf course, like I do feel intimidated sometimes. And like I really wanted to change that.
Interesting. So full disclosure, I don't golf. I think I've been to a
You
golf course like
should.
once or twice. I'll drive the cart around. I'm good at that part. And I definitely can't the driving part, like actual driving part, like the swing drive is like beyond me. But whatever. I've gone once or twice. But I think the punchline is I'm not as aware of what does or doesn't exist on the golf course. What did exist before Bove Active here, not in Korea, and like what were the gaps and what are you solving? So there's elements that you've alluded to in some of the earlier parts that we talked about, but like what is the stark difference and what are you transforming? Maybe it is part of this being the community aspect, but it sounds like there's a fashion aspect to it too. So help me understand that a bit more.
For sure. That's a really good question. So I'll tell you what is available right now in the market, like how the situation is. The biggest retailer in Canada is Golf Town, like the physical stores, right? Golf Town has everything golf. So you go in, there's like clubs, shoes, like simulators, anything that you can think of. But once you walk in, it's like an amusement park for men, because most of the things are for men, and there's only a tiny section for women. And when you go and look at the women's section, it's actually kind of devastating, because like I mentioned, like all of the options available are just, they look like they're outdated, they're from outlets. So most people don't really shop there, and that's why I ask customers, I'm like, oh, where do you shop? They're like, not, I don't shop in Canada. I mostly shop in the States. They purchase online. So that's how it is right now. And that's a lot of the products available are mostly catered towards. I don't know who, to be honest. I want to ask them, like, what is it catering towards, right? Because it's not older women, it's not older generation, because they're so outdated, unflattering. It looks like men designed them. They don't know what looks flattering on women. And functionality wise, as golf is more male dominated, when women go into the golf course, we do feel intimidated. And when you like when you think of golf, like addressing to the ball, you're leaning a little bit, like a little, not squatting, but like leaning a little bit, kind of showing your butt. So when you look at our products, our skirts, they have longer backs so that it
Mm.
gives you a little bit more coverage and people feel more comfortable. We always have shorts underneath that is either attached or given separately, which can be worn into different ways as well, to yoga class or biking or anything like that. And also, like, there's so much more. All of our fabrics are sweat wicking, waterproof, UV resistant, and all that stuff. So yeah, like fits are really great as well. What we have in mind when we're designing always is, how can we make this more versatile? And I think that's one big thing that we can do to be part of the sustainable fashion aspect, because we're not here for fast fashion. Like our products are high quality, and we want women to actually mix and match with their existing clothes,
Okay.
and also for every day as well. I was on breakfast television this April, and I was wearing our products and a blazer on top and with heels, and
Cool.
nobody can like notice that it's something that you can wear for golf, tennis, or yoga, Pilates, anything, right? So I think that's the beauty, how we make it different. And like our fits are so good. Like people look so good wearing them. So yeah, like we really want to make sure they feel confident and good when they're on the golf course and also outside as well.
So you mentioned some other sports there. Is this just for people that golf, or do you have different lines for different sports, or is it more versatile and interchangeable? What does that look like?
So I play tennis. I know like there's specific guideline for golf and tennis, especially golf as well. When you go to a private course, I always recommend people to look at the dress code prior to they go in because our products, some of our products don't have collars. Some of our products don't have, like, they're not as long as they are required to be. So I make sure people do check that. But again, like our products are super, super versatile. They can be worn for golf, tennis, anything like every day. Because I feel like at the end of the day, like golf scene has changed a lot ever since the pandemic happened. I know even golf courses, like when you look around, people that you interact with, your friend group or any founders, like they are more open to trying golf than ever. Prior to the pandemic, my friends were like, Michelle, why are you golfing? That's such a white retired man sport. Like it's so boring. I'm like, no, it's actually really fun. And now people are like, oh, golf, can you teach me? It's so cool. So I
So it's like
think the
opening up the
perspective,
approachability of it
yeah, so
all
the
up.
perspective has changed a lot. And also, if you look at golf fashion, there's a lot of streetwear style inspired golf wear brands as well. So, like hoodies and like cargo pants that are water resistant, more like active lifestyle. So, I think nowadays, like the whole aspect has changed compared to way before, where it used to be more rigid versus now it's way more open.
Got it. So, I mean, I'm sure people are super curious. How do you get started in this? So you don't have a background in fashion, but you're talking about the right looks, the right materials. I imagine there's like a supply chain. Like there are all these things that the typical startups that we bring on the podcast aren't always dealing with because they're software. So we're talking about the technology stacks they choose and how AI is going to change it and adoption. What does that look like for this? And where did you even get started?
So Google and YouTube was my best friend when I was getting started. I think this is the case for a lot of like founders as well, because that's when you get the information. Also during the pandemic, I just couldn't meet people to like ask around as well.
Right.
Um, I was Googling a lot, I would say, to find manufacturers, but one thing for sure was that I wanted to manufacture overseas. Living in Canada for a long time, like I don't think Canada is known for sewing and manufacturing clothing, and also labor is too high that I knew if I wanted to produce high quality products for activewear, I had to go overseas. So I did a lot of research and started reaching out to all of them, like cold emailing, cold messaging, like cold calling, a lot of those things, and
Wow.
showcasing like who is willing to work with someone who doesn't have that background, who is willing to help me out. Because I feel like a lot of the manufacturers could be really cocky, be like, huh, you gotta have your own thing. But I didn't want to work with someone like that. I wanted to work with someone who really wants to help out. And that's like similar to anyone in any industry too, where you really appreciate that support, right? So that's how I got to like find my first manufacturer. I I was sketching a lot. I was doodling a lot.
Okay.
And also I got a lot of like inspiration and all that. And it goes through a lot of like sampling process of making it. First sample cannot be perfect. So we would iterate as we go and see what would work and also like wear it, test it out and all that stuff. And then that's when you finalize things, all these accessories and all that. But I would say like to be very frank, like I didn't know a lot in the very beginning, but finding the right manufacturer who's willing to help out really opened up a lot of doors and a lot like I built a lot of knowledge from that.
So does the manufacturer also help with the design element, or were you having to do both of these in tandem?
So it all depends. There's also like companies that already has a design team within their whole like
Uh,
factory. Yeah, which is something that I didn't know either. So I would provide a lot of like inspirations and designs, or even like there's these things called tech packs, but my tech packs didn't really look technical. Rather, it was more like drawings and like lots of meetings and like explaining, but as we go, we're evolving. But yeah, that's when yeah, that kind
what
of looks like that.
what was like the hardest part? So like it sounds like I know maybe it was that easy. You're making it sound like a bit of googling, a bit of YouTube, finding the right supplier. But like, what was the hardest part of all of that? It sounds like it was a big hurdle. Was it like figuring out how to manage the cash flow of inventory? Was it like the time that it took to get through those cycles? You also said earlier that you thought you'd create a high quality product and you put it out there, it's just gonna sell. Like, what
Yeah,
were some of the key challenges that you've faced and some which you've overcome, or maybe some that still exist?
yeah. So I think first batch, we overproduced. Like we thought we were gonna like, so not having that data, and also this is like a lot of founders who are in the fashion industry or have that like actual product, they do have this mistake a lot too. But back then I didn't really talk to anyone, that I didn't know that could be our problem. But that was one thing. And also looking back, I was thinking like, oh my God, we have to use the best fabric, we have to use the best accessory, high quality. But at the end of the day, like we should have started with something more simple and like keep getting feedback from the community rather than having the best like product ever and investing too much. That's what we did. I would say that's one mistake, but we're trying to figure it out as we go now. Still work in progress, and even like finding manufacturers, like we're constantly looking for different manufacturers. Um, I call them like dating. Like you gotta like samples are basically like dates. And there's some toxic relationships as well where you're like, oh my God, like what's happening? But then you're feeling comfortable that you can't really leave, but at the same time, you know you have to get out. So similar to that situation, we're always looking for if there's any better options. But working with manufacturers, I don't think I have that figured out yet. We're learning as we go. But challenge wise, I think the challenge was how do we get in front of more people? How do we sell? Was the biggest challenge, and how we navigated through that was number one, we did a lot of pop-ups. So not a lot, because I had my full-time job that my availability was only during the weekends. So yeah, we wanted to showcase our products in front of the people. So how do we do that? We go to pop-ups. We do like we showcase them in front of people and tell them about our story um just being online and having really beautiful photos. And another way we navigated that was for me to showcase our story more.
Hmm.
So I started, yeah, I think
Not
when I
just about the
started,
product, but your
yeah,
story
about our
inspired the purchase of
story,
the product.
yeah, and like our mission and our like why we're doing what we do, that we're not just cute clothing, right? And why women should get into golf, why they should buy our products and how they're gonna feel. So this is also work in progress, but in the very beginning, people were like, everyone wants to see who's behind the brand. You gotta talk on the camera. But I felt so uncomfortable. I am a social person, but when a camera comes at me, I just freeze. So I think I did a lot of practice in terms of like storytelling, like showing the BTS. And also, I had this incident where I was like, I had a really bad, not day, but I had a really bad interaction with the successful entrepreneur, and he like basically told me I'm gonna fail. So I was like, oh my God, I'm tearing up, I'm crying. Oh, this is the moment that I have to take out my camera and film myself. So that's when I started like filming more about like my personal journey, how I'm building the brand as well. So yeah, I started doing that. We got more traction. Like a lot of people resonated more, and showing that vulnerability really helped me get validation from a lot of people that they also go through the same thing. And that's why I love being connected to founders as well, because we go through similar challenges.
Well, thank you for coming on to the pod. Thank you for sharing that story since I know this is like, a newer thing for you. But it sounds like some of those things are working. One of them that I guess people are probably curious about, that it sounds like the pop-ups have helped, the community building has helped, but that probably doesn't solve the overbuild. So like what would be
Yeah.
your like lesson in that, which is like what did you do with the overbuild? And how would you, if someone else was getting into maybe athleisure, but just anything fashion related, how would you guide them to think about that first production run? Because I think you always, maybe you get stuck in the, well, if we don't build enough, we won't be able to sell enough. We will end up upside down on revenue. So you buy a lot, but then it doesn't sell. So how did you manage
Mhm.
that? Or how are you managing that?
So the overbuild from the very first batch, we still have them. So we are now that we have more clear messaging and strategy in terms of what we're doing, because I still believe in those products. Now we're doing more marketing with influencers and all that. So we're trying to like gift those products rather than our current products,
Got it.
kind of like in parallel. Like because I feel like what the best thing about our first batch that we overproduced was that it's like very classy, very like staple pieces in the wardrobe that I know like if we sell in 5 to 10 years, it's still gonna be selling.
Classics. And that was the
Yeah,
first.
very classic that I'm not too like anxious that we have too much. Like I'm always like thinking, okay, the more people that we serve and we more people find us, they're also gonna be people who are interested in those products. So yeah, that's how we're managing that, still managing.
Is that,
Um
would you say that that's like a core, like it sounds like maybe it was intentional or maybe it was by mistake, but if you're dealing in fashion, would you say that that's a core principle, which is for your first run, if you're going to bet big on something that is maybe more timeless and less risky. Because if you get something risky and you're sitting on inventory and that is super out of style in a
yeah,
year,
so I'll answer that question, and that's also some like my answer for a second question that you asked, right? Like how can people not make that mistake? So what I realized is that there's a lot of manufacturers that does lower MOQ, like minimum order quantity. So I would find, and even local manufacturers, even though I did mention that producing in Canada is more expensive, if they have the skill set and also has the MOQ, lower MOQ, then I would definitely go for something lower and then test it out. Like also like there's so many different ways to get it showcase that journey to other people that even friends, family, like ask them to try it on, like see what can make it better. So I would do that, like find a manufacturer that can produce low MLQ and then test it out as you go. You never know because as all startups do and all businesses do, like we pivot as we go. Like we never know who's what's gonna make it super big. So let's say as a fashion brand, who knows, like um a whole different demographic would find it really, really interesting and we become a brand that cater towards them, right? So like I think my answer would be to like focus on lower MOQ and test it out how that goes.
so even if it's like slightly more expensive for
Yeah.
your first run, focus on a minimum order quantity that's suitable. Don't necessarily chase the price for your first as you get the ball
Yeah.
rolling.
And also you're gonna learn so much from that process as well of like dealing with the manufacturers and so much that I can even list, right? And that yeah, you'll get so many learnings from that and take that learning and maybe find a different manufacturer, see what works, what doesn't, and yeah.
So what's sort of in the cards for you over the next 6 to 12 months? I imagine golf season, at least here in Canada, has to be winding down. I don't know if that means
Mhm.
you set your sights more south where the weather is warmer. But sort of what's the next 6 to 12 months look like for Bov Active?
So now that I am full time with both, I really want to focus on wholesale. So again, going back to our mission, like how can we get our products in front of more people so that they actually feel empowered and want to get into golf and stay active, right? So I do want to dive into wholesale, being part of like showcasing our products to more retailers, indie retailers. That includes golf pro shops or tennis pro shops or any lifestyle boutique shops. And this also includes online presence as well. There's a lot of different online platforms where you could shop different things. Canadian wise, there's Essence. There's like American like Revolve or Bandier. There's so many different online platforms where people go and shop who is our target market. So we really want to get into those so that we get more exposure and reach broader audience.
That's cool. And it'll be good to maybe at some point bring you back to understand how that journey went of like going
Hmm.
wholesale versus retail, because I think
Yeah,
it's probably a newer muscle. Everyone just thinks they put the
for
brand, they go
sure.
direct to consumer online, but there is
Hmm.
value in doing this wholesale option, both for discoverability, but probably is like as you build the brand, if the brand's not moving through the wholesale channel, the wholesalers will have an opinion of you. And so you got to kind of do a
For
bit of both
sure.
random. So
So
I'm
I'm
very
really
excited to
excited
learn.
to like dive into it. I'm going back to like every day is like a student mode where like, oh my God, so much learnings. I'm excited to like dive into it. So I know that wholesale is gonna be a whole nother world and a beast that excited to learn.
So if people want to find out more or want to get into golf and join one of these SIP community events or purchase
Sip
some
and
Bov
swing.
Active, what are they called? Sip and swing. Sip and
Yes.
swing. I got to work on my swing first, but maybe I'll find
You
my
can
way
come
there.
to our sip and swing.
I got to work on the swing first, but I'll be there at some point.
Yeah.
Where should people go to find out about these? Is it the same place for everything?
Yes, so on social media, we're handled at Bov Active. Also, Bov stands for Birds of Victory because birds mean, yeah, it represents good things in golf. So Birds of Victory, BOV Active, and our website is bovactive.com.
Awesome. And so the sip and swings, are those on the website as well, or go to social for
On
those?
our socials, yeah. We're
Social
trying
for
to do
sip and
more.
swing.
Yeah, we're trying to make it more accessible, more consistent. Now that I'm doing full time, I'm excited to do that too.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the hard switch that is always a tough decision. Looking forward to seeing this next chapter of your journey. As we kind of wrap up, whether it's building an athleisure brand, whether it's making that leap, whether it's figuring out how to go manage the supply chain of retail, what's like one thing that maybe we haven't discussed that you think other entrepreneurs or people building in the fashion industry need to hear, based on your experience?
What I would say is, what I would recommend is number one, if you're not like a mega influencer and you already have that audience to sell to, I would say like any other fashion brand or any brand it is, I would really work on building my audience, what the product and what the brand will be serving. Having that audience when you start and showcasing that journey so that they're part of the journey of the brand's growth. I think that's really important. And that's if I had to go back, that's what I would do.
Got it. So build up yourself a little bit, even as a part of the personality, or find someone to be a part of it that can be the vehicle of that for the brand. That's actually really good advice. Michelle, thank you for coming on to the Pitch Please podcast. Thank you for helping me learn a little bit more about, the space of golf and the athleisure space, and also helping us showcase startups that aren't the traditional mold, aren't the software pursuit, but actually doing something different, which I think is good to help inspire the different types of things people can do. And thank you for sharing your own story today.
Thank you so much, Mike, for having me today.
Thanks everyone who joined in, and we look forward to catching you on the next episode. Have a great day.